everybody. Work 180 is on a mission to empower every woman to choose a workplace where they can thrive. As an advocate for working women, we provide job applicants with a directory of endorsed employers who support diversity, inclusion, and equality. And on our website, we share information around pay equity, flexible working, paid parental leave, equal opportunities, and a range of other really important criteria. All of Work 180's endorsed employers go through a pre-screening process to make sure that they meet all our criteria. It really is an exciting time for workplace equality, and we're so passionate about it, and we're just getting started. Today, we're bringing to you a webinar on working with kids at home. During this COVID-19 lockdown, a lot of people are having to work remotely, and many of them have kids out of school at home with them, which presents a whole new set of challenges. It's not just working from home the way it used to be. And so today, we're bringing you a panel of speakers to discuss their experience, what they've seen employers doing really well, and offer some advice to you while you're also going through this time. Now, Work 180, we've been working remotely since we were founded, which was 5 years ago. But we're also new to working from home with kids. Most of us have school-age children or kids in daycare, and we work with home without them most of the time. So we're also learning at the same time as you are. So let me first introduce you to all our panel members. So first we have Jane from Work 180. Jane, if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Jane Saddington. I work in the marketing team here at Work 180 and have been here for just under a year. I live in Victoria, so we started remote schooling last week. I have 3 children of the ages 5, 9 and 11 at home with me, and my partner owns his own business in construction, so he's not often home to be able to help. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Great, thanks so much, Jane. Jules, can I go to you next?
Hi, I'm Julia Bickley. I am an inclusion strategist with Work 180 and manage the customer success team across Australia. I've been here just over 12 months now, and I have a 13-year-old teenage son at home with me at the moment, and we're sort of navigating as a sole parent family through this period, and excited to share some advice for other single parents out there.
Great, thanks so much, Jules. And Beatrice, if I could ask you to introduce yourself.
Yes, sure. Well, my name, it's Beatrice, and I work as a customer success partner at Work 180. I've been here for nearly a year. Time is flying, very quickly. And I live in Victoria, and I have a 4-year-old boy here at home with me. I've been sharing my workplace with him for the last 6 weeks or so. He's not yet in school age, but we've decided to pull him out of kinder and childcare until we have more clarity around what's happening. So the struggle is real, and I'm excited to be part of this discussion and be able to share, any tips or, if my experience can help any other parents out there going through the same, then I'm excited to be a part of it.
Cool, thanks so much. And we also have with us Tom Archer from Nab, who is one of Work 180's endorsed employers. So Tom, if you could tell us a bit about your situation, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So as mentioned, my name's Tom and I'm a talent acquisition manager at Nab. I live in Victoria, and I've got 2 toddlers at home with me during this time. So that's 2 twin boys. They're not at school age yet, but we have pulled them out of daycare. So it's organised chaos at the moment, and it's definitely a juggle.
Yeah, okay, amazing. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. So like I said, we're going to be talking about balancing remote work with having kids at home. Jane, I'd like to start with you. You recently wrote a blog piece called 6 Ways to Survive Working Remotely with Your Kids at Home. And I was hoping you could share some of your tips around remote working with your kids and some of the insight into the 6 tips and what you found the most effective with that.
Yeah, sure. So in my blog, I gave some tips around things like keeping a routine, things like packing lunch boxes every day for the kids so they have their food supply for the day, adjusting your work schedule where possible to line up with the kids' routine, and also things like just getting plenty of sleep. We all know what kids are like when they don't get enough sleep. They struggle to concentrate and they can get stroppy, and so can I, quite frankly, too. So I think plenty of sleep is really definitely a key to having a smoother day the next day. I think for me, there are a couple of things that I'm finding are really important. The first is just being prepared. And I know that sounds really simple, but it can make all the difference, because I think working remotely, the hardest thing is all the interruptions. So I've got 3 kids, so it's constantly, you know, mum, where's this? Mum, where's that? I'm hungry. All those sorts of interruptions that can happen all day long. So I think trying to reduce those interruptions as much as possible is the key. So just being really prepared. So I spend the night before having a look at what my kids will be doing as part of school the next day, and I try and preempt what they might need. So all the things like, you know, the headphones, the paper, the scissors, all that sort of stuff, and making sure everything's labelled so they can't fight over those things during the day either. They know whose is whose. So just having those things at their fingertips, so it just reduces those interruptions that happen throughout the day. I think another thing I'm learning and finding more and more is that you know your kids better than anybody. I think using that and using their strengths and weaknesses and sort of planning your day around that really helps. What I'm finding is really helping. So the whole one shoe does not fit all sort of applies. So for example, with me, my eldest daughter, Zoe, is your typical overachiever. So she's 11, but I have no worries with her working away, planning her day. She will go over and above with everything that she has to do and do more than what she has to do. So giving her the responsibility of planning out her own day, she thrives off that. So I'm quite happy to leave her to her own devices and let her get everything done. And also using her to help with my little one who's in prep. So I will tell Indy, ask Zoe first, and Zoe's quite happy to help out because it feels like she's sort of the mother figure as well and can help out. So that sort of plays on her strengths and kind of, once again, eliminate some of those questions that might come my way. Whereas Riley, my middle daughter, is almost the complete opposite. She's your typical, what's the least amount I can do to get this done? So she needs a lot more sort of motivation and encouragement, and she needs sort of shorter study periods with a lot more breaks than what my eldest daughter might need. So really working out those sort of strengths and weaknesses and how they work best, and not trying to lump them all into the same routine and same schedule, I think really can help your day go a little bit smoother. And the last thing I'd probably want to mention is don't fall into the trap of comparing yourself to anybody else. I think it's so easy to do. My daughters will come up to me quite often and say, oh, so-and-so's doing this, or so-and-so's mum's doing this. And it's quite easy to sort of think, oh my goodness, I'm not doing that. Why am I not doing that? And to sort of, the mum guilt sort of rears its head, and you think, oh my goodness, am I not doing enough with my kids? Are they going to be behind when they go back to school? And don't do it. Don't fall into that trap, because it's not useful. And you know your kids best, you know your family situation best. So do what works best for your kids and for yourself. And don't fall into the trap of comparing yourself with anybody else. I think they're probably my main tips for today.
And so can I ask too, so you've got 3 of 3 different ages, so they need 3 different things, and their schoolwork is different and all that kind of stuff, which I think makes it even harder than when you just like, I just have one 6-year-old and I'm finding him quite high needs. And how do you manage then your work amongst all of that? Because that a lot of that's about managing your children, but then you're also trying to do a full-time job around that. So what does your day kind of look like through that?
Yeah, so I've had to change the way my days work a couple of times just to try and get it to work. So my children, they all have to jump on WebEx at the same time at 9:30 in the morning. All 3 of them on their iPads trying to get into the classrooms can be a bit of a task. So I have now changed my day so that I don't start now until 10:30 every morning to try and work around that. So I'm there in the morning with them when they have their classroom catch-ups. So I sort of run from one to the other to sort of listen in and try and get all the points that are happening, and then I can set them up for the day. So I can sit with them, I've got half an hour to sit with them after that and just say, okay, this is what you've got to do. Obviously, as I said, my eldest Zoe is fine. I don't sort of have to worry about her so much, but the other 2 I sort of need to sit with and sort of plan out the day and say, well, this is what needs to happen, and then I'm ready for work. So far that's working okay. But it's definitely a challenge, and it's always going to be a challenge. No matter how much you're prepared and organised, there's always going to be something that pops up throughout the day. So yeah, it's a juggle.
Yeah, there's a lot of unpredictability right now. So, Jules, if I can move over to you. So you talked about the fact that you're a single mother, as am I, and that comes with some additional challenges. So can you talk about what your experience is right now working with your son at home and how you're handling things at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'm a little conscious of how I answer that question just because I'm fairly acutely aware that I'm still in a position of privilege compared to some other single parents in that, you know, I'm well educated, I'm still employed, thankfully, and I do have the support of friends and Ruben's dad and stepmom to help us navigate through. So unfortunately, not all people are in that position right now. However, saying that, you know, I still need to acknowledge that it's really not easy. And to be honest, I never actually really felt like a single parent more so until this current climate came along, and it really highlighted a few things for me.
I totally agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I had everything under control. But sometimes like those things that we rely on, you know, the support of friends and family to, you know, help babysit or, you know, with that physical distancing in place and just being able to actually sort of schedule some alone time or some time away, those options aren't as available. So it really is about sort of maintaining a sense of mental health and well-being, making sure that you are still sort of getting some alone time as well factored in. And, you know, whether solo by choice or by circumstance, I think single mothers and fathers were just under quite enormous strain right now. My own experience with my son is sort of mixed. I think I've come to accept that this is a roller coaster-esque type of environment. I have some really great days and then I have some really bad days. And, you know, on the upside, my son and I have so much more quality time together, and, you know, I'm able to hold more space for him if he has questions he wants to ask me or schoolwork he needs help with. Whatever he needs, I'm right there. I'm one room away essentially. So that's been really, really nice. On the other hand, it is quite disruptive. Although, as you said earlier, being used to working in a remote work from home environment, having Ruben with me all the time, there are constant interruptions. So I'm based in Brisbane, and across Queensland we had term two, being introduced over a learning at home environment, and OneNote across Queensland just crashed yesterday as all the students tried to jump online to do schoolwork. And so I probably had a dozen emails from teachers with resources coming from all directions. So that was pretty tough, but we're navigating through it. And I guess the key things that I'm doing to cope are really, you know, having a teenage son, I think, makes it moderately easier because he can understand when we speak to him about what COVID is, what adaptations we've needed to make and why. He really grasps that, and he accepts that responsibility of sort of being more self-sufficient and practicing the art of self-discipline to make sure he's doing his schoolwork and he's not on the PlayStation. So I am sort of fortunate in that regard that I can be a little bit hands-off. But, you know, he's missing his friends and he's really feeling the strain of being cooped up inside all the time. And so there are definitely moments through the day where he's not coping so well that I need to be there for him with. So I guess my single saving grace as a single parent is just embrace the mantra that just doing enough is good enough, and reminding myself that I'm essentially performing 2 full-time jobs with absolutely no assistance. So all of these balls that I have juggling in the air, one is bound to drop, probably a few will drop, and that's okay. And if I let people down, then I just need to show compassion for myself and, you know, rely on the fact that others will show compassion for me as well. So, and as Jane said, sleep is so important. I've really made that a priority, and some self-care just to make sure that my mental health and well-being is as good as it can be, because, you know, that old adage of you put the mask on yourself when you're on an airplane before you assist someone else, I think that really holds true. If I can be strong and I can show resilience, then I can help others around me as well.
Yeah, I totally find that too. Like if I'm well rested and I have reserves, then because my little boy's 6 and he wants me to play with him a lot, and he wants me to play games that I do not want to play, like Pokemon cards, which is the worst. And so when he comes up and he's like, Mama, will you play? And I'm meant to be on a work call or whatever, and like managing that is much easier if I'm like rested and have a full bucket. Whereas when I'm tired, I'm like, I can't do it, and like you kind of like lose it a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not screaming at my child. That's more internal.
Oh, look, I've done that a few times. Yeah. I'll admit.
So, Tom, if I can move on to you. So your kids aren't yet at school age, so you're not trying to balance homeschooling, but younger kids are pretty high needs. So can you tell us a bit about how you and your partner are splitting your day, how you're fitting work around kids, and how you're keeping them like entertained and exercised during the day?
Yeah, so I'll take my hat off to Julia. I can't imagine doing it on your own. It's going to be an absolute hard thing to manage there. But I guess from our situation, it certainly isn't easy. My wife is she's a managing director of a medium-sized business, so her role's pretty demanding when she's needed. It's pretty critical stuff. So you throw my work schedule in with that, and then a couple of terrorist twins, and you have got a pretty decent recipe for disaster there. So we found there's a couple of strategies we've applied, and I think a few of them have been touched on already. But one thing that kind of was I guess it's really set us on the right path was dividing and conquering. So actually making time to plan, how are we going to do this? Not just we'll roll with the punches, we'll go with it and see what happens. It really helped create, I guess, a good dialogue and a good communication to go, right, where's the flex and where's the give? What can you kind of change in your schedule? What can you move in mine? And I guess an example of that is I start my day at 6 a.m. and then work through to 8:30 a.m. And then my wife has her meeting from 8:30 to 9:30. So I can step in and help out and look after the boys from that time. And it gives me a little bit of flex throughout the day that I can drop tools when I need to and swing into full parent mode. So it just kind of works that way. And having that kind of, it wasn't a written agreement, but it was a verbal agreement of what we were going to do and where the flex could potentially be, really helped us when, for example, yesterday my son was about 5 meters away and projectile vomited while I was on a conference call. And because we had a good dialogue and we knew exactly what the criticality of our days looked like, I knew that my call was, look, sorry guys, this is an in-house call. I'm really sorry, I've got to drop everything because I've got something to clean up. And it just really helped from that instance. But we do make sure that we carve out time as well as a family to have dinner together. So my wife does the breakfast, I do the lunch routine, and then we all sit down together as a family. That's really important that they don't see, I guess, one or the other and get this divided family approach if possible from us, because we do want to make sure we're carving out that special time for us as a group. And then there was also, I guess, the routine. So it was touched on earlier by Jane. The routine's so important. I think it took a couple of days for our kids to kind of get their head around that they're not going to the park and they can't play on the playground, and life's changed a little bit. But the routine also really helped us. It just helps you give a structure that you can spot those opportunities where I can book my one-to-ones in with the team and I can take the boys for a walk around the block in the pram and take them off to the park and stand there with my team on a Zoom call, and it's not impacting work or home life too much. That really, really has set us up quite well for success. And then you can also schedule in afterwards that you can, after they've gone to bed, I can jump onto anything that's urgent or critical. But my word of advice or kind of caution there is make sure you have strict cut-off time. Because you're at home, there's a danger that you can always work because your work's at home now. Everyone's at home. So you've got to have those really clear start and finish times. And when it creeps outside of that, you need to start being really ruthless with what is critical, what needs to happen, and what can I reprioritize. And then my final thing for managing the boys really is just planning, like having those activities sorted. We've actually resorted to moving toys out of the environment because there was almost too much in there, and every day they go in and it's the same chaos, the same stuff everywhere. So by filtering toys in and out, it's almost like, oh, this is a new toy again. And we have taken to scouring Pinterest to get ideas for activities and simple ones you can make at home, like toilet tubes that you can pin on a board and then they drop pom-poms down them. that provided us with hours of entertainment, and then it's bored and then it swaps out for something else. So it's just keeping that fresh. I'm sure if we had one activity for too long, we'd be bored. And if there's too much, you get fatigued from it. So they were kind of my saving graces that we've learned so far. And look, it's continually changing and moving, and I'm sure we'll find out more, but that's kind of what's worked with us so far.
Yeah, so I really like what you said about routine. A few people have mentioned that, and I've really found that too. Like I was like, oh, I'll just kind of figure it out as I go. And then I actually found if I just said, this is our day, and like at 9 o'clock you're doing reading eggs, and at 10 o'clock you're doing this. And even if we didn't actually follow that routine exactly, having it really helped, I think. And the other thing that I really liked that you said was having the Zoom call with your team when you're walking your kids to the park. And so there are calls that are critical. Like obviously we're not doing this call while we're walking our kids to the park, but there are calls where it's actually okay to blend the two, and not so much if they're coming up and talking to you, but even then, like the interruption doesn't always matter. And so that's, I think, important too. Like I've got a kind of a deal with my son, that there are some meetings that he's not allowed to come and interrupt me, and he'll be like, what about if I spill milk on the couch? And I'm like, nope, you can't interrupt me. He's like, what about if I get stuck on the floor? It's like, nope, you can't interrupt me. And so we like tell the things that he's not, like he knows that there's like 1 hour no matter what, and then he's like, what, and there's a lot of what ifs, and then he's like, okay, and he doesn't come and interrupt me for those. But then knowing the times when it's okay for him to come up, and he likes like popping his head up here and like seeing what everyone's up to and stuff, and like that's fine when it's an internal meeting. And so I really like that. So B, if I can move on to you now too. So we spoke recently about the fact that you were sort of saying you had to get used to your day being interrupted all the time. So can you talk about that, like how you're managing those interruptions, how you got okay with it, and how you're managing work? Because sometimes we need to actually be like in the work and thinking about it, and you get interrupted and it's quite disruptive. And so how are you managing all of that?
Yeah, well, I think there is a few things that have been touched on, either from Jane or Jules or Tom, in terms of the challenges that we are all experiencing at the moment as parents. But for me specifically, about the fact that my day is going to be very disruptive. I think the first step for me, I think that was the most obvious challenge for me initially when this whole thing started, because as you said before, at Work 180 we all work remotely, but it's a different story when you have a kid at home. So for me, I think the first thing that I did, or I guess the first thing that helped me acknowledge that was going to be the case, was to make peace with the idea of, yes, I'm not going to have a very structured day. It's not going to be, the traditional kind of 9 to 5 setting, or 8 till 4, or whatever that might look like for you. It's going to be very different. So acknowledging that and accepting that was the first challenge. So it took me about 2 weeks perhaps to realize that. And then once I did, and I said, okay, this is not going to work. I'm going to try a different approach and see if it works. I think the second step that I took was communicating with my team about that situation. The good thing, though, that I think that we all have right now is that we are all everyone, parents, everyone working from home at the moment, is that everyone is on the same boat. So it's not just you trying to juggle lots of things. So I think that helped. And that helped me, I guess, to say, okay, this is not going to work. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to talk to my team. And then I also have open conversations with my clients. For example, when I am going to see them, I let them know, I have a kid at home. We might be interrupted. So I think that helped me relax a little bit and face and overcome, I guess, that first challenge of having a very disruptive day and finding ways to deal with it. The second thing, I think, or the second challenge was to find a routine that worked. And I think going to Tom's point of swapping toys, you know, to make sure that the kids don't get bored. I think for me, it's, I've done that, but also I've took the same approach with the activities that we do and with the routines that we have in place. So even though we've now reached the point where we have some sort of routine together, where we wake up, have breakfast, you know, we make the beds together. Well, he tried to help, but yeah, it's like we do the best we can. And then, you know, let's sit down and do some activities. And the interesting thing is that he's been very helpful in trying to find that routine that works. He said one day, and that's why it made me think about another, like a different thing that I had not done before, is that, in school, because he calls childcare school, in school, the bell rings when we can do activities, or when we can have something to eat. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started using alarms to kind of help him swap from one activity to another. It's still a little bit, you know, disruptive for me, but it keeps him entertained, and I think it helps him feel that he's in sort of a familiar situation, which is good. I think with the routine, the main thing that has helped me do that is just, get to know how he behaves during the day, how long does it take him to get bored, and then I structured the day that way. And the other thing that we've started doing is using a whiteboard to kind of write down, like with images and stuff, because he still cannot read, the different activities that he has for the day, and then he can pick from one or the other without having to ask me. So I think that's kind of one way we've used to kind of overcome that challenge of making sure that we find a routine that works. But going to Jules' point, I think we also need to be mindful of the fact that that's not always going to work, and knowing as parents that, you know, we are doing the best we can with the resources that we have and the situation we are in, and trying to be a little bit more compassionate about ourselves from that perspective. But yeah, I think that the routine was one of the challenges that now I think we've kind of found a way to go over it. And then the other one is finding time for myself. So I don't know how I feel about people when they share on social media, or when you talk to friends and they say, oh, you know, I've used this quarantine time to go back to reading and, you know, do this and do painting. And I'm like, what? Okay, well, that's been the total opposite to me. Like, because before, even work, I felt that it was time for myself because there was no one at home. It was just me. So I had time to concentrate, do breaks whenever I like. But the thing is that now my breaks are to dedicate time to Andy. That's my son's name. And then when my husband gets home, because he's still going to the office to work, they are a very small team, and they are doing everything that they need to do for the social distancing stuff. He's still going to work, so I spend the whole day with Andy. But when he comes home, then that's when I feel that I have time for myself, either to do something for me, going for a walk or whatever, or working. Even working, I feel that, you know, without interruptions, I feel that's time for myself right now. So I'm being more mindful of that now, and trying to communicate with my husband and say, okay, well, I just need to go for a quick walk. Or I've incorporated, you know, for the last week or so, we've started to go for a walk, my son and I, during the day, even if it's a short walk, or even doing yoga. There is a very nice TV show for those parents that likes yoga for kids. Is called Cosmic Kids. Is in YouTube. And that's been very helpful. I do it with him as well. So that's kind of a way that I can try and do something for myself, even if it's not entirely me time. But yeah, we're getting there. I think those are the main three challenges, and how we've kind of try and overcome those during this time.
Yeah, fabulous. So if we can change the conversation a bit now from our individual experience and what it's like being at home with kids to the more kind of what are companies doing. So Tom, I thought I might start with you. What have you seen working well at NAB? Like what are they doing to support employees at home and employees who are working at home with kids?
Yeah, good question. So it's been a learning curve, I think, for everyone as we adapt and change. And some of the more formal programs that we have around flexible working, we've pretty much seen a shift to what we have, because banking is an essential service. There's probably about a 90% shift to everyone working from home. So in terms of that's been great. Zoom's being used in a great way. We've got some amazing technology that we're able to tap into and connect as a team. There's also some programs that we've been able to tap into called Nab Care, and they're effectively, it's access to emergency childcare and senior care workers or, care workers for their family where they have to go into work. So that's a really an amazing program that they've provided. And so where they have to go into the office, you can actually tap into that and use it. And then the leave they provided has been pretty supportive as well. So they've got pandemic leave, which can be used for if your kids aren't able to go to school and you can no longer have the time to work. So you've got to look after your kids. Just tap into your carers leave to do that as well. And also your sick leave and annual leave. So they're really trying to apply some of those to all of the kind of care arrangements that we need to have now. But there's some other quicker, simpler ones that probably aren't as, I guess, organisation kind of specific or defining, but ones that are just compassion for each other. So everyone's got a similar situation typically. And so it's okay to have your kids come on the call, introduce them, say hello, be human. I mean, after all, we're all kind of going through this as the first time in our kind of working histories together. So some of the senior leadership and I know certainly with my team, I'm trying to be as real as possible so that they feel comfortable being able to do the same with their kids and how they're working and not having to hide it. That's had a pretty huge impact, to be honest, in just being real about it. And there's a workplace Facebook group that's been set up, which is Parents at NAB. And it's an amazing place where parents can share issues, they can collaborate, they share YouTube channels for learning across the business. They look to kind of share learning tips or activities. They profile parents at work and how they're coping. And it's really just a free resource where people are able to share their insights, connect, have common issues and find common, I guess, answers and results for it. And that's been such a great thing to see. And it's also quite a funny outlet as well, because people are able to share the funny side of what's happening and some of the chaos that ensues, and it's just keeping it as a really nice and supportive culture than it being seen as taboo, which is, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that is great. You know what I loved about what you said just then was the thing about keeping it human. Because about probably 8 or so years ago, I was doing a women's leadership development program, and it was people from lots of different companies all brought together, run by chief executive women. And there was a woman who was doing the program, and she was working for one of the major law firms, and she had a 3-month-old baby. And she said she had gone off and she'd taken 3 months maternity leave. And then she came back to work and she said, I never even mentioned the fact that I have a child at work, because she didn't want people to like change what they thought about her or change opportunities. And now, whilst I do think things have changed and that response is probably less common now, I found it really devastating that like the biggest thing that had happened in her life, and she wasn't even telling anyone about it at work because she was concerned about how it would affect her career. And I think, we are all kind of in this together, and our kids at home and them being healthy and happy and mentally okay is the most important thing. And to be able to share that and be open about it is, I just think, was really important and like crucial in terms of supporting everybody with the juggle that they're going through at home now. Really like that. So Jane, if I can ask you, what's your experience been like? What are you seeing Work 180 do to help support the people who work there here?
Yeah, so as we've said before, we've been working remotely all along, but obviously this is something that, none of us have ever been through before. It's a different set of circumstances. I think in my experience, just being, it's the little things that really make the difference. So just being so flexible. So in my case, when the kids were on school holidays, I took 2 half days off to be able to, a week, to be able to spend some time with them, go for a walk and do some things. But then obviously when school started back, I then had to change my times again, and it was never questioned, or there was never any, my line manager was well and truly open to me changing. He'd change meetings around my time, to help make my day better and to make it work. And also I think just the open and transparency that's happened within Work 180, coming from the leadership team downwards. I think even in our team meeting that we have once a week, there's a section just for, COVID-19, does anyone have any questions? And more often than not, no one will have any questions, but it's always there, and it's always the opportunity for people to be able to ask any questions they might have or open up a discussion. So I think it's really those little things, just even sharing memes between team members and staff, just to keep it light and just to have a bit of a laugh every now and then makes all the difference too. So, I'm feeling really grateful for the circumstances that I'm in and for the team that we've got here at Work 180.
Yeah, totally. And also the COVID memes are the best thing about the whole experience. There's so many funny ones. I love it. Now, Beatrice, you have access to a lot of our endorsed employees in your role in customer success. And so what are you seeing with endorsed employers that's really working well in terms of what they're doing to support their employees?
Well, different employers are doing different things, of course. But, one of the things that I've seen is consistent in most cases is employers that had employee assistance programs in place for employees. They've kind of extended that to members of the same household to support them through this time. They've also extended the type of services that they offer. For example, ACCO, who is they are one of our clients, they have included financial advice as part of their EAP program. Other employers are doing things that I thought that they were kind of, I love them. I mean, the kind of strategies that they are putting in place that are beyond, policies or programs like the EAP. So, for example, Hollard, they are an insurance company. They are sending vouchers every, I'm not sure if it's every fortnight or every month, to employees. Delivery vouchers for them to use either to buy dinner or lunch for the family, or also, this is an example of what happens. It's they do delivery vouchers for the family to use either in groceries or meals, so they can kind of use that, and that can help them deal a little bit perhaps with some of the stressful situation we are going on. Maybe we can swap to Jules while I address this situation here, and then I can continue.
Absolutely. So I'm going to so we've talked a bit about our individual experiences, and then we've talked about what employers are doing to support people at work. And then I want to move on to kind of a more systemic kind of look at what's happening as well. So Jules, before, as we were preparing for this webinar, you shared a discussion article that had some really eye-watering statistics in it. So I want to share some of that article, and then I'm going to ask your opinion. And Tom, I also want to talk to you about some of the stuff that's in this as well. So these statistics are American, but it can be extrapolated out across Australia as well. So if American women received minimum wage for the unpaid care work they do around the house, including caring for relatives, they would have made $1.5 trillion last year. Globally, women would have earned $10.9 trillion, and they do 75% of unpaid domestic labour. So if we look at the amounts that the federal and state governments are investing to help us get through this pandemic. At the moment, that's up to over $210 billion. So that's to help us get through the pandemic and its associated social and economic fallout. Perhaps we can also consider the eye-watering sums women are being asked to invest in the form of additional unpaid domestic labour and care. The article then goes on to quote Helen Lewis recently, who wrote for The Atlantic. For too long, politicians have assumed that childcare and elderly care can be soaked up by private citizens mostly women, effectively providing a huge subsidy to the paid economy. This pandemic should remind us of the true scale of that distortion. So Jules, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that initially, and why you kind of shared that article, and what you think about it.
Yeah, for sure. Curiously, actually, before I managed to find some stats that were related to Australia that I'll share in a minute. But curiously, yesterday, with the fallout from teachers at my son's school not being able to share resources on day one of term, I was chatting to one of his teachers, and I think this really illustrates that disparity of paid and unpaid work, but also layered over that, the juggle of being a single parent. And so with her permission, I'll share with you, she's a single parent, she's a teacher, she has a son, and she also has a partner, but they live separately. And so they operate as sort of two independent households. He has 3 children himself. But he works in an essential service as a nurse. And so his challenge is relying on friends and family members to look after his children while he has to go to work. And her challenge is, now that she's working from home and she's in this new environment, to being able to provide the curriculum for the term, independently, and being able to look after her child as well. That volume of like paid care work that we identify as, teaching or childcare workers, etc., with that volume of unpaid care work that she's now doing. Interestingly, well, not so interestingly, really, but that was an issue that she experienced pre-COVID, and it will be one that will continue to prevail post-COVID as well. I think it really highlights to us that, I pulled some stats from the Workplace Gender Equality Agency's report. They have a report, Unpaid Care and the Labour Market. And the monetary value of unpaid care work in Australia is something like $650 billion. And that equates to about 50.6% GDP. So you've got a huge proportion of unpaid care work that's not calculated in the GDP. And women's spend of that is over 64% compared to 36.1% for men. So you can see that regardless of the global health crisis that we're finding ourselves in, this was an issue that has been going on for some time. And this is just only that really highlighted that even more so for us now. I think Annabelle Crabb really articulates this well in her book, The Wife Drought, that, fundamentally what we've seen is women's workforce participation increase. We've got more opportunities to be employed in meaningful and well-paid work, albeit we still have a long way to go. And yet our domestic and parental duties and responsibilities haven't declined. So it's not something new that we've needed to contend with. But I think perhaps scenarios like this, that, this crisis that we find ourselves in, can really be a catalyst to sort of address that long-standing issue of women bearing the brunt of that unpaid domestic labour and care. And we also need to be mindful that women are like predominantly in those concentrated lower income bracket paid type jobs. So I think there's a responsibility here for us to assign some kind of value to that household protection hours, so that we can look for some solutions like that will result in that redistribution of unpaid care work between genders, helps us reduce that gender stereotype that we experience, and means that women can continue and increasingly have more workplace participation.
Yeah. So I just want to unpack a couple of the things you said then. So one is that the book, The Wife Drought, was written in 2012. I love that book. And I feel a bit of despair that it was written 8 years ago and actually not that much has changed in that time around all the topics that she's talking about in that book. And the other thing was, you said that in Australia, the unpaid domestic labour is 64 point something % done by women. And when you said that, I was like, that's not that much over 50%. But then you said that men compared to 36% men. So women do double, more than double what men do. And so I just wanted to highlight that, because initially I was like, 64 sounds pretty good actually. But actually, so women are still doing more than double. And then I also just had a funny anecdote to share about this, where so I have a lot of friends who are at home with their husbands. Everyone's working from home. They've got kids there. And there's obviously like a lot of tension around this disparity of labour that's being done between the genders. And a friend said that she was really struggling with her husband, who was every day he was going out for an hour for a run or for a swim, a surf or whatever. And she said to him, I'm not getting any time to myself. And he suggested that her time when she goes to the grocery shop was her time to herself each day. And just like the blindness of that. And I do think that it's the increased pressure around what's going on right now might cause force a bit of a change. So Tom, if I can put you on the spot a bit as the only man on the panel, what are your thoughts and experiences around this issue of unpaid domestic labour, balancing your work with your partners during this period? I didn't actually know what your partner did, and I'm really glad to hear that she has a big job. And so you're not it's not like she's still on parental leave, which would make a big difference to how do you try and manage this right now. She's actually trying to also manage a big job. So what's your experience and opinion, and how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, so it's a really juicy topic, isn't it? I mean, we pride ourselves as a family of being fairly modern with our outlook and how we kind of balance things from a home life perspective. We share almost all of the household duties. In fact, I'm probably a little bit more on the OCD side of things, and you will rarely see me without a Dyson handy vac in my hand and going around the house. But look, with my wife working part-time, there is probably a greater risk of her picking up more of the parenting duties, and as a result, some of those house chores that you just do when you're doing that. So I have to really make a conscious effort to end the day to put down tools to go and help with some of that stuff, because just being in the house is not enough for me. Like, it's not something that I should go, well, I'm at home, she's in there, if she needs me, then that's enough. I think the workplace has come a long way in helping to address some of this imbalance. So when we look at more females returning to work after having children, paternity leave creeping into a lot of different companies' policies now, so that women can go back to work and males can be the main carer. We're seeing some closing of the gender pay gap, potentially, or more recognition that there is a gap. Flexible working, and all of this stuff is helping to kind of address some of that, but it's got such a long way to go. And I think during this time of crisis, it almost seems that slipping back into those stereotypes of someone might not be working full time, so it's easier for them to flex and to completely drop tools and help out with the kids, or because maybe they haven't focused solely on their career, they're not paid as much, therefore, well, you can pick up the slack with the children. So we've got to be really conscious of not disadvantaging for those reasons, because it's slipping back into those old problems and old issues of days gone by. So I think I don't know what the solution is, but all of the unrecognised duties around the house and looking after dependents, there's a risk with COVID-19 as you have single income households. If someone does lose their job through this, it further exacerbates the issue where you've had someone that has been doing the unpaid work and you've got suddenly no income. So it's a real challenge that I think the Australian economy and globally it's going to see is what happens to those households. So I don't know what the answer is, but it's really interesting. And I think we need to do everything we can to support those families, whether it's financial support from the government, whether it's just more opportunities to return to work and have a part-time workforce. But it's an interesting thing we'll be facing into, I think, when we come out the other side of this.
Yeah, I agree. And what do you think about the role of men taking on more caring and domestic labour duties, and how that then enables women to participate in the workforce more actively?
Yeah, I mean, it's just logical, really. I mean, if you can take up more of the parental duties or household duties, then it's going to free them up for more time to be able to do that. I do know that we structure our whole work life around that balance of I start work earlier, I get home earlier, I look after the dinner, I look after the kids while dinner's being prepared and everything, and it allows my wife to come back later on days. So I think without that partnership, it makes it very hard to be able to have two people in the same household having successful careers. And that's the thing. I think one of them is pursuing the career they want to pursue versus taking an income because it's a means to an end. So I really want to support my wife so that she can have the career that she wants and has every opportunity that I have. And I do know that it feels a little bit one-sided because I'm 5 days a week. It's easy for me to pick up additional work and responsibilities at work. But for her, because a lot of the downtime is shared it's parenting responsibilities, it's much harder to be able to flex on that. So I do think that a lot of the stuff that the companies and employers are putting in place are only going to create more and more opportunities for households to have two successful careers, two thriving careers, two high-flying careers, whatever you want to call it. And that's kind of what we need to pursue. I think every organisation around Australia has a gender target where they want to hire more females. And it's only through more and more practices like this that they're going to be able to get more females back into the workforce. And I just hope it continues because it works for us amazingly. And it's great for my boys to have a really strong, positive female role model, as well as a strong male role model as well in myself. But to see their mum going to work, to having that career, it's amazing for them to see. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. That actually brings us to the end of the prepared questions. This has been a really interesting chat with everyone. Interesting to hear all the different views and particularly think what you said, Tom, is really true about how, on the one hand, the current circumstance might actually force some change. On the other hand, in lots of cases, it is forcing a bit of a reversion, isn't it, back to a more traditional setup because women are paid less and so they're more available and they might be working part-time and so they're taking on more of that load. And so, I hope it goes the pressure way of changing things rather than making things just slip back to how they used to be, and this being a good excuse for that. But thank you all so much for your time. And that's it from me.